Let love lead the way through change. Not the kind that jingles in your pocket or your purse, not the kind we stuff in a jar. That inside change, right? Let love lead the way through change. Now, many of us have been through changes, and we know it's not always easy, sometimes not even fun, is it? But we also know that if we want something different than we're currently experiencing, something has to change, doesn't it? And we've tried, many of us, for years to change all that stuff on the outside, haven't we? And it just doesn't work. We come to that realization that it really is successful living from the inside out, like we say around here. Successful living from the inside out. It's how life works. So today we're going to be continuing our exploration of my theme this month, which is peace and nonviolent communication. And my talk today, it's based on actually Marshall Rosenberg. He is probably the most well-known for the nonviolent communication work that he's done. This is one of his many books that he's written. And we're basing this month's series on this book. And my talk is applying this idea of nonviolent communication in our lives. And we opened up the month talking about, Reverend Glenn talked about the idea of using nonviolent communication in our social environments. And then we talked last week about what exactly is nonviolent communication. What is it? We talked about what it was. And now today we're talking about applying it. And there's some unusual ways, some differences, some changes in our languaging, in our communication style, obviously, to move ourselves into this methodology. So we're going to look at some of that and applying that change within ourselves in this nonviolent communication process. Now, I want to start today, much like I did last week for those that were here, and invite you to bring to mind a situation, recent or old, that was a conflict in your life. Something that didn't perhaps was not as enjoyable. How about that? It was not as enjoyable, maybe, as you would have liked it to have been. Got it? Could be old, could be just this week, right? Things happen. So bring that to mind. And then once you have that, I want you to think about the actual situation and the specific thing that that person does to make your life less wonderful. What happened in that moment that was occurring that made your life feel less wonderful at that time? Okay, got that? So let's keep this sort of over here, and we'll be coming back to it a little bit throughout the talk today to make it relevant so that you can look at applying this idea to your actual situation, making it more relevant, All right, so for the past couple of weeks we had those two questions we've been talking about, right? And it's kind of the foundation of his book that he brings us back to. And as I've continued to explore this work, I continue to deepen into the idea of what he's really talking about here. And the first question is, what's alive in you? What's alive in you? What's alive in me in this moment? And when I continue to deepen into that idea, it's like, what's active in me right now? What's active in you? It's a check-in, isn't it? It's a personal check-in with what's going on. What's going on? And I'm going to say what's active in me right now is this air conditioning is still way too cold. John, would you see if you could turn that up just a little bit more? Need a jacket in here. And the second question is, what can we do to make life more wonderful for ourselves and others? Turning up the air is making it a little more wonderful, right? There you go. Perfect example. So what can we do to make life more wonderful? And what that does is Wrong one? Okay. What that does for us is it brings us fully present in the moment to be sensitive to not only what's happening in ourselves, but what's happening in everybody else around us, doesn't it? What can I do to make life more wonderful? Well, I can stop beating myself up with negative thoughts, right? Yeah, that would make it more wonderful right now. Check in with your body. What's going on in your body? Am I comfortable? Am I happy? Am I hungry? Is it time for breakfast? What's going on? Check in. And then being aware around us what's happening with the people that we see. If we see somebody walking up with an armload of stuff, I could make their life more wonderful probably by helping them out a little bit, at least holding the door, right? How can I help make life more wonderful? Being present to that. So he tells us that the purpose of nonviolent communication is to create connection. To create connection that allows compassionate giving to take place. That allows compassionate giving to take place. And he says that we need a language for that. And we talked a little bit about this last week, that we need a language of feelings, of needs, and requests. Because that stuff can come out in a more violent way, can't it? Requests can sound like demands. And we all have different reactions to demands than we do to requests. So how do we express that in a way that's a gift to the other person? Isn't that a beautiful thought? How can I express my feelings, my needs, my requests that is actually a gift to the other person? I love that. I love that idea. And that's the way that we can share what's alive within us, what I'm feeling right now. You know, what the need in me that I'm feeling right now. How can I help make life more wonderful for you right now? So this nonviolent communication is a way to get us back into our natural state of compassion, of compassionate giving to each other. I mean, we're seeing that demonstrated now today with the compassion that we're all feeling for the donations that we've brought in that are going to Houston to support those folks that are struggling right now with just basic necessities. And there's compassion in our hearts for doing that, right? When you were bagging your stuff up and bringing it in and thinking about doing this. Yeah, that's our natural state. So last week we talked about the vocabulary of feelings, and in the book he has a whole big laundry list of them. We put a few up on the slide. And when we are feeling fulfilled, we might feel amazed, confident, joyous, surprised, thankful. When we're fulfilled, it's easy to be grateful, isn't it? That gratitude just bubbles up. But when we're not feeling fulfilled, and we may be angry, annoyed, puzzled, discouraged, embarrassed, lonely, sometimes it can be hard to find that gratitude. Be grateful in advance. Yeah, it's kind of hard when I'm empty. It's kind of hard when I'm empty to do that. So think about your situation, the one that we thought about in the beginning, and how were you feeling in that? How were you feeling during that situation? What feelings were there for you? Were you feeling angry, annoyed, puzzled, lonely, fearful? And what about our needs? What about our needs? That's the other piece of this that Marshall talks about in his book, is that we all have these basic needs, and he lumps them into 7 categories, 7 big categories. We're going to talk about those. The first one is autonomy. And it's choosing our dreams, goals, values, and plans. It's our independence. We have the right to choose, and we're going to choose the life we want, right? What dreams we focus on. We've got our dreams and goals up here that we've been praying with all year. We get to choose that. The second is celebration. And that's creation, the life that we've created, our dreams being fulfilled, celebrating those milestones and things. In my company, we realize that we have these big projects that take a long time, and by the time we get to the end of it, we're already starting on the next thing, and we don't stop and celebrate. We don't stop and celebrate. So one of the ladies brought in a big old cowbell into our office, and anytime something good happens, the person that, is at the end of the line on that rings the bell. And everybody drops everything they're doing, comes out of their offices or pops up out of their cubes. It's like, what happened? And that person announces what's happened, and there's a cheer or whatever goes up. But we at least pause for 30 seconds to celebrate whatever this wonderful thing that has just occurred is. Celebration. It's so important in our lives to celebrate our milestones. And we're going to do that in community in November with our ordination celebration. So we are going to do some celebrating. And the next thing is integrity. Integrity is our authenticity and our self-worth. our authenticity and our self-worth, interdependence, acceptance, appreciation, community, emotional safety. Interdependence, we come together here, right? To be connected in community, interdependent upon each other. And then physical nurturance, that's our Maslow's hierarchy. That's your basics, air, food, rest, shelter, those basic needs. And then play. Who doesn't get enough play in their life? Yeah, I see some hands, I'm with ya. More play, more fun, more laughter. Our Fun with Friends group. I love you guys, seeing you go out and do the things that you do, the miniature golf in the dark, and all the smiles, and then the stuff last weekend. That's fun, right? Yeah. And then lastly is the spiritual communion, beauty, harmony, inspiration, and peace. Again, we come here for that. We come to our Wednesday night group for that. We all have our own spiritual practices that we do, hopefully every single morning. Gosh, I get it in every week. I love this. So spiritual communion is very important also, that connection and plugging back into Source. So these are needs that we all have. These are just not me or just not us in this little community. It's universal. These are the needs of human beings on our planet. We all have them. So you can see how we might have some conflicting needs sometimes. Can see how that might happen? If I'm in my place of spiritual communion and I want to meditate, and somebody else is in interdependence or celebration, right? Celebration. Come on, let's play or celebrate. I'm like, I need a little quiet time here. I need a little centering time. We could have a little conflict, couldn't we? Could have a little conflict. So we can see how that might happen in our lives. So I want you to think now. I'm making y'all think a lot this morning. Get to think about another thing. I know it's going to be difficult to think back, and it's probably only one in your life, okay? Think about a mistake that you made. Think about a mistake that you made. I know it might be a long time ago. I know, but try to bring that to memory. And think about that and ask yourself, how did I educate myself after I made that mistake? Now what that means is, what was my self-talk? Was it, oh, honey, it's okay. That's just a little mistake. You just learned from that and moved on. Or is it more like, you idiot, what is wrong with you? You don't do anything right. You're so stupid. What's wrong? Anybody have any of those self-talk thingies in there? Oh, yeah. The second one. So, if you've overreacted to something, I know that doesn't happen. You guys are all nice, calm, cool, and collected. But you know, we sometimes end up calling ourselves a very bad person, or thinking about ourselves as a very bad person because we yelled at somebody, or we did something, or we made a mistake. We're a bad person, right? Bad person. Well, I had a wonderful example of this, as always happens, right? Friday, I was in the office for some closing that was happening, and one of my coworkers came in and asked me to sign a check, and then just began to berate herself like craziness. And I was listening to her, and she had made a mistake. I missed this check. It was a commission check for one of our salespeople, and she said, I didn't get it in the check run yesterday. I can't believe I did that. I'm so bad. I'm so horrible, and I just impacted her life. So, I mean, just this litany. And I thought, wow, this is it. This is nonviolent communication, and she's actually expressing it about herself and this mistake. So I tried to help peel her off of the ceiling, and she didn't want to hear it, of course, right? When we're in that place, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear that it could be anything else. But we were able to turn it around a little bit to get it to the point of, what do you think the need was that you violated within yourself? Wasn't quite like that, but that's basically the question that we asked. And what it turned out to be is that this person sees herself as a person of service to our office. She's in the accounting area, so she's very detailed and organized. And she's responsible for making sure that things happen on time and the right way. And for her to neglect this one check, she felt like she was not being of service to her community. She had violated her own value, her own need to be of service. And she was mad about it. She was mad about it. She was mad at herself, and she was beating herself up and making herself completely wrong for that. Can you see how we do that? Yeah. When in fact it was a mistake, and she'd already contacted the person, and the person said, that's okay. She goes, well, I'll drive it to your house. I'll drive it to your house. I'm so sorry. And she said, I'll be in on Monday. I'll get it then. It's okay. So the person that was the receiver, lack of receiver of the check, was not really upset about it. She was okay. But the person that had made the mistake was a bad person. Was a bad person. And I think that's what happens with us sometimes. And instead, a better question that we can ask ourselves instead of, I can't, what is wrong with you, is what need of mine wasn't being met by my behavior? Why am I so mad about this? Why am I so mad about this mistake? What need of mine wasn't being met? Oh, I dropped the ball in serving my community. Now, does that make me a bad person? That makes me sad, doesn't it? And isn't sadness a more natural emotion than being a bad person, beating ourselves up? So you can see how we ask ourselves some crazy questions, don't we? What's wrong with me? Why do you always do that? As opposed to, what need of mine wasn't being met? I know sometimes when I experience anger, I'll stop and ask myself, what am I afraid of? Because usually anger is a reaction to fear. So asking ourselves better questions helps us on this road of transformation. So back to the idea of overreacting and speaking unkindly perhaps to someone. I saw an article, I'm not going to say that, never mind, I'm not going to share that article. But if you've spoken unkindly to somebody or in a controlling way or yelled at them in some way, asking what need of mine was not met by that behavior. Well, maybe it was my need to respect all my brothers and sisters on the planet, for we are one, and we are all whole, perfect, and complete. And I violated that by making someone less than by yelling at them. Well, maybe I have a conflicting need that says I need to feel safe, I need to feel secure, and what they were doing was not allowing me to feel safe and secure in that moment. I've got conflicting needs within myself, right? And when those conflict, one of them's going to win, right? One of them's going to win. So sometimes that overreaction happens. So the idea, Marshall suggests that when we have these activities and these actions and these things that happen around us, rather than beating ourselves up for it, that we mourn our behavior. I think that's an interesting concept, to mourn our behavior. And he says that is instead of blame or guilt or punishing ourselves. Mourning, different feeling, isn't it? Mourning our behavior. Now, this next idea is very interesting, so bear with us. The idea of mourning our behavior and not apologizing for it. Not apologizing for it. Listen to this. He says apology is basically part of our violent language, and it implies wrongness, that you should be blamed, that you should be penitent, and that you're a terrible person for what you did. And when you agree that you are a horrible person, and when you have become sufficiently penitent, you can be forgiven. If you hate yourself enough, you can be forgiven. Isn't that awful? I mean, really. But when you think about it, what's your experience? Go back to your situation that happened. Did you or the other person apologize? Did you or the other person apologize? Did that fix it? Did it evaporate and go away forever? In my experience, no. In my experience, that's the surface level. That I'm sorry, I apologize profusely. That's the surface level of it. When we can go to that deeper level, our question in those situations is usually, what happened? What's going on? Or as Marshall says, what's alive in you? What was alive in you in that moment that caused you to react the way that you reacted, to respond the way that you responded? What was alive in you? What need was not being met in you that caused that lashing out at me, if that's what it was? What was that? That's a more powerful conversation, isn't it? That's a more powerful conversation than just going, I'm sorry, okay, forgive me. Because that doesn't work. It's that compassionate level of understanding between us that is the healing work that we do. That's where the true forgiveness comes. It's when we can gain that insight and have that compassionate sharing with that other person. Amazing, isn't it? Kind of got to wrap your mind around that one a little bit. I know I did. So empathy, compassion, all of that. It's a deeper conversation. Takes more time. Takes more time, doesn't it? Takes a little more face time to be with somebody and to understand what's really up for them, what's really alive and active. And you know, if we're the ones that are learning nonviolent communication, guess what? We get to lead that conversation. We get to be the ones that go, hey, I think there might be something going on with you. Let me tell you how I'm feeling. Let me tell you what needs of mine are not being met in this interaction. And can I make a request? Powerful language. Diffusing situations. Marshall uses this material all over the world in really sticky situations to diffuse horribly violent things. Neighbors coming together where one neighbor killed the other neighbor's child, and diffusing that level of violence and hatred. And where he's the American in the room and they all hate Americans and they want to spend the time attacking him as opposed to figuring out how to solve their problems. It's powerful work. It's very powerful work. So we need to learn to empathize with ourselves, cut ourselves some slack. Yeah? Cut ourselves some slack. If we can't empathize with ourselves, how are we ever going to empathize with anybody else? It's kind of like self-love, isn't it? If we can't love ourselves, why would anybody else love us? Yeah, and if we're blaming ourselves all the time, guess what? Others might blame us. Yeah, others might blame us. So nonviolent communication helps us learn to create peace within when there's conflict between what we did and what we wish we had done. You ever been there? In that place of, oh, I wish I'd have done this instead of that. And that's conflict within ourselves. It's that self-talk that we have. Marshall says, if we're going to be violent to ourselves, how are we going to contribute to creating a world of peace? And we're trying to create a world that works for all. The same principle works. It's got to start right here. It's got to start right here. One person at a time. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind and the author of the Science of Mind book, he says, if we believe in suffering, we shall suffer. Life responds to us in the way we approach it. We should choose that which we wish to embody, and by constant attention to it, take on all of its characteristics. So let us choose to be identified with power and love and beauty, with peace and with happiness. And this is back to his theme that he talks so much about, this idea of embodying these principles and these ideas to where they become part of our nature, second nature to us, part of our nature of who we are. It's just how we respond. It's just how we think. And we stop going to that bank of old drawers of beliefs back here and pulling out those responses and things. We stop and we go, hey, whoa, what need of mine is not being met? It's not in that drawer. It's right here present in front of me. It's right here present in front of me. So let's move to our practicing the principles and see how we might be able to use some of this week. Number one, use the questions. The more I have embodied the use of the questions in my life in the past couple of weeks, the more profound they become. What is alive in you? What's up? What's happening right now? What's alive in you right this moment? What are you thinking about? Lunch? Is Kathy going to sing another pretty song? Is she ever going to stop talking? Right? What are you thinking about? Check in with your body. Is it comfortable? Room temperature better? Hot? Some of you are hot now, I know. Chairs comfortable? How's your neck? What's going on? Check in. What's up with you? What are you experiencing? Be in tune and be present to what's happening here and what's happening here. What's up? Number two, how can I make life more wonderful for you? I love that as a staying present in the moment question. To just continue to ask ourselves that all day long. I think I'm going to tattoo it on my arm. What can I do to make life more wonderful for you? And just look around life and look for opportunities and look for ways to do that. To be of service, to be of compassionate service to others. And the first way, of course, is being kind to ourselves, isn't it? Watching that self-talk, watching that self-blame, asking ourselves better questions. Being more wonderful to me is better mental self-care and better physical self-care. Rest, food, nurture, play. Number three, learn the language of needs. Learn the language of needs, also feelings, of course, but needs, this autonomy, celebration, integrity, interdependence, physical nurturance. Remember HALT? We talked about HALT before. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, stop, halt, take care of it. Those are those basic needs that when we get out of whack in the basic needs, we don't think straight, do we? No, we become cranky. I do anyway. Play and spiritual communion. And then number four, the last one, to learn and grow. Growing edge kind of question. How could I have met my need in a different way? That's a great question for contemplation, isn't it? How could I have met my need in a different way, other than, if I'm feeling fear, other than yelling at that person to stop what they were doing? How could I have met my need for safety and security in a different way? How could my friend met her need of service in a different way than beating herself up? In your situation, how could you have met your need? Or the person that you interacted with, how maybe could they have met their need in a different way? That's our growing edge, because from that is where we learn our next behavior, right? We put a new belief back in those old drawers and clean out some of that old stuff. So you can see that this idea of nonviolent communication, applying this in our lives, is really deep work and does require building some better communication skills for ourselves, to find those words, to find that language, to find our heart space and compassion to be able to have that communication with people, particularly when they're in the throes of their anger or their frustration and their violent words. It can be difficult to stand in that, can it? But this guy does it, so it's possible. And if it's possible for anybody, it's possible for everybody, right? So the key to speaking peace is our self-awareness and staying present in the moment. And then going back to those questions, what's alive in me? What's alive in you? How can I make life more wonderful? And just like we opened up with, if we can remember that love is all there is, if we can remember that love is all that there is, and keep going back to that higher awareness, speaking peace becomes much easier, doesn't it? Speaking peace becomes much easier. So we'll close today with a quote by Rumi. And he says, "Raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Thunder and lightning destroy. That gentle rain grows the flowers." So I invite you to join me now as we anchor this in one of our affirmative prayer treatments. As we go within, we recognize that there is only this one life, and this life is the life of God. It is the one infinite intelligence, power, and presence that is in, through, and as all that is, was, and ever shall be. There is nothing outside it, beyond it. It is all, and it is love. That healing, transforming power of love. And all of it is here now, present in this room, and it is in, through, and as me as an expression of it. And it's in, through, and as each one of us here today, for we are all divine manifestations of this one infinite mind and intelligence, the one body of God, all connected, interconnected in that one big, ginormous celebration of life itself expressing that we have come to do here with such joy. So I speak my word this day for and about each one of us, knowing, claiming, and accepting that full expression of joy in our lives. And that we know that we can just simply set aside the blame, the guilt, the shame, and step more powerfully into better questions of ourselves and meeting the needs that we have and the needs that others have, and allowing our compassionate nature to be revealed in powerful and potent ways. And I also speak a word this day for all of those impacted by our national disasters, be it fire, flood, earthquake, anywhere around our planet right now as Mother Nature shakes and shimmies. We bless Mother Earth. We bless all those that have been impacted by it. And we bless each and every one that is contributing to the relief efforts, knowing that these donations are lovingly packaged and transported and blessed on their journey into the perfect right awaiting hands, and that lives are transformed through all of that which is shared with our brothers and sisters. So it is with a grateful, joy-filled heart that I release this prayer into the action of law, knowing that it is done, knowing that Spirit is good, life is good, and that we are so blessed. We affirm together by saying, and so it is.